everybody. As you can see, I I just came back from watching Thor: Love and Thunder yesterday. Yesterday, because I normally I usually film the video right when I get back home and charge the batteries on my smartphone, and but not this time because funny thing, I gotta tell you that I was feeling I gotta say that during this week I was feeling kind of like a little bit woozy on my head, but things got a little bit worse because on the way home, the rain caught me up and I got really wet. And you know that when you get wet by the rain, the more you get older, the more you get vulnerable to get a fever after that. So yeah, I got a little bit sick, and I spent the rest of the day. Sorry, spent the rest of the day I spent it on bed, resting, and I woke up. I feel a little bit better, for what you can say is better. And it gives me the chance to actually talk about my thoughts on Thor: Love and Thunder, which is, of course, the latest Phase 4 of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And boy, I got some things that I had to say. While Thor may not be exactly kind of like the best and the favorite of all the Marvel superheroes that there is still a charm that people still have with him, and they really love him, and it's all thanks to Chris Hemsworth's acting and personality, and honestly, good for him. I like Chris Hemsworth. I like Thor itself. About the movies, I'll say that I was fine with the first movie. Then Thor: Dark World, people always kind of consider it the worst of all the Marvel Cinematic Universe movies. But personally, as much as I only saw it once, I can't say that it is. I still consider movies like Iron Man 3, Black Widow, and the Eternals, and even Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Seven Rings, and the Rings. Okay, I don't remember now exactly. My head is still woozy. Well, Shang-Chi. All these movies I find it worse than Thor: Dark World. So I'm pretty much a little bit of an apologist to this one. But maybe if I could watch it again, I might see why people hate it, but I don't feel like watching it again. So probably maybe this is another one of those reasons why people don't want to go back to see Thor: Dark World. Thor: Ragnarok. Many people. I did like it. I did like it fine. People kind of say that it went a little bit over the top to make it more humorous because they wanted to copy kind of like the style of what was it? Guardians of the Galaxy. I can see that because still to this day, the first Guardians of the Galaxy is my favorite of the Marvel Cinematic Universe movies. So yeah, I can see why people like Ragnarok, and it had a style. It has a style and all these things. I wasn't very keen to make the movie made the Hulk talk, but maybe it was a little bit of a natural progression considering that the Hulk does talk in the comics. I only know basics of it. And well, it made the Thor movies a little bit more fun. So they decided to try again, this time with Thor, Love, and Thunder. And I can see a little bit of people having their worries about it, considering how the direction of Phase 4. And, and I understand, and yeah, I honestly gotta tell you guys, I'm really beginning to feel the Marvel fatigue now, in which you see it, and honestly, this phase is not exactly as good as the other one was. And I could see why. It's mostly because the other phases, it had it had something to look up for. It showed that there was something that we were looking up for. For example, during all the first three phases, we were all looking for Thanos. And the whole thing was building up to Thanos. But now Thanos is gone, and Phase 4, it doesn't even have a concrete goal. It doesn't say that, okay, what is the new phase is going to build up to? It doesn't show if it's gonna build up to Galactus or it's gonna build up to. Okay, it kind of build up the multiverse, yeah, but it doesn't build up something that we are looking up for, like Galactus again. So I can beginning to see why, and because of that, because it doesn't feel like it has a concrete goal, it feels like this phase is getting weaker and weaker and weaker, and all these projects are doing just for, how can I say, just for monetary value, or to give these actors kind of like a job, I'll say. Also, I'm gonna admit that not much of these are kind of like bad ideas. I actually kind of like the. For example, they find a excuse, quote unquote, to bring back Loki back to life. Although that's kind of like a multiverse thing. Just in case, again, I never saw any of the Marvel TV series of Disney Plus because I am a little bit of a Disney Plus boycott, as well as I'm not exactly keen or interested on it. I only hear snippets and just hear kind of like those angry reviewers in order to just do it for the fun of it, and I can see why some people are not exactly kind of like keen with it. The latest ones are, from what I heard, what was that, Moon Knight? I don't know exactly much about him, and right now there is a little bit of an ups and downs with Miss Marvel, in which honestly, whether you like the show or not, I still have the biggest question that no one dared to ask. Is that I know that the character of Miss Marvel is kind of like a big fan of Captain Marvel. But here's the biggest question that I have. Why will you be a fan of Captain Marvel when she barely did anything? Because here's the thing. She only appeared in 2 movies up to this day. So she didn't do enough, or she didn't do so much in order to get a fangirl. And considering also that the stuff that she did were mostly kind of like how can I say, outside witnesses or something like that. I mean, I could understand, for example, they're fans of Captain America or Iron Man because people see it, they were rescued by this. But Captain Marvel, in order to have a fangirl, at least in that universe, it felt kind of like impossible, since she barely did anything in order to gain at least one of those, at least in that continuity. So how the hell that happened? Maybe I'm wrong. I never saw the show, so it's just speculating what people said. When I'm writing about this, when I'm supposed to be talking about Thor, Love, and Thunder. Either way, like I said, I kind of just went open-minded, despite all the things that they were saying. For example, people are worrying about the a little bit of the homosexual tone that it was in the trailer, although I didn't find it too much of a big deal. And people were also very worried about Lady Thor, but I know that this is also part of the comic, and I didn't see much about it. Some people were worried about the tone, and I finally went to see it. Despite that, I was a little bit, with a headache, and during that Peck Theater, I'll say, the Peck Theater, the theater was full. And here's my honest of Thor, Love, and Thunder. It had the love, but it didn't strike like thunder. I found Thor, Love, and Thunder one of the two, not exactly a good movie, not a bad movie. Okay, maybe not exactly a good movie. Okay, let me rephrase that. Thor, Love, and Thunder is probably one of the worst written Marvel movies I have ever seen. The writing is terrible, but the way it was trying to be as a movie, the way it was trying to become more of a comedy, it amps up the entertaining value. This movie has a lot of entertaining value. It's really entertaining, and there are a lot of it has a lot of promises and a lot of stuff that it could make this movie really good, but the direction and as well as some of the dialogue and how it's written is probably some of the worst I have ever at least seen or catch up. Granted, it's not Eternals bad or Black Widow bad or Iron Man 3 bad, but maybe the problem that I have is that the movie felt a little bit tone deaf in one way or another, because it has so much serious subject matter that it didn't handle very carefully the balance between comedy and serious moments. And believe me that I like when there's kind of like tonal whiplashes when done right. My favorite anime series is Gintama. Gintama does a magnificent job on combining seriousness with comedy. Sometimes it gives you kind of like a big whiplash, but it is the timing. It has great timing on that. And this one, it didn't do much. I still kind of question some stuff. Maybe it's a Marvel Phase 4 fatigue that some people is having. But honestly, I just came out just getting out of the seat, hearing some of the audience saying that this movie was dumb, and I was like, this movie was lame. I was entertained by it, but damn, it was kind of lame. Kind of lame. I'm probably a little bit better than Dark World if I want to be fair with others, but no, I don't think about it. Okay, before I keep dragging on, and let me give you this, the synopsis. I'll say that we got Thor. He's hanging out with the Guardians of the Galaxy, just finding himself. He actually also managed to get in shape after becoming a slob on Avengers Endgame, and of course then he begins to see that someone is killing lesser gods. It is basically this villain called Gore, the God Butcher. He's played by Christian Bale. What else I can say? I'll talk about this guy later. He goes there, and then he tries to investigate all these things. He finds out that he infiltrates this section on the planet Earth that they call it New Asgard, and he kidnaps children. And while defending the children, much to his surprise, he finds out that his old hammer, Mjolnir, has been restored, and it's thanks to his old flame, Jane, played by Natalie Portman. And of course, basically, it kind of turns into, you know, the Marvel situation in which they have to find a way to stop this guy because he kidnaps the children, and he apparently wants to use them to his means, which is basically killing off all the gods, I'll say. There is something a little bit more than that, but I'll get to that. Let's go first with the acting and some of the characters, I'll say. Obviously, Chris Hemsworth as Thor is magnificent. He portrays the character really good. Although in this one, they made him still, you know, kind of dumb, or sometimes even dumber, like a ton of bricks, I'll say, and still containing, you know, his sense of honor. Although not pretty much. I would say that he was more kind of like this kind of like guy trapped in a heavy metal world, I'll say, considering the tone of this one. What else there is? There is also, I'll rush down also saying that, what was it? Tessa Thompson as King Valkyrie is there too. Although she's more kind of like a secondary character. Another secondary character is, of course, Korg. You know, the talking rock guy with a sense of humor. You know, played by Taika Waititi, the director himself. And you know, he's the kind of guy who I was like, okay, he's more like a comic relief guy, I'll say. Fun. I think I'm not exactly warm up with this guy. I heard that many people like him. I know he directed Jojo Rabbit, but I haven't seen that. But I think I saw him in Lightyear, and yeah, he's kind of like the worst character in Lightyear, and I don't know about this guy. What else there is? What else I can say? Korg is basically kind of like just this walking chatterbox. We got, of course, Jane coming back, played by Natalie Portman. She basically plays, you know, the old flame of Thor. She in this movie now she has cancer, which is, of course, from what I gather, is also part of the comic canon, and of course, while she's doing all her chemotherapy and all these things, she gets called by Mjolnir, and whenever she holds the hammer, she basically gets restored to her health. But of course, later it is revealed that it also sucks on her life and all these things. And so the more she uses her power, the more the closer she is to death. She does also has a good job. I'm not exactly against Natalie Portman or anything. Some people kind of say that this movie made the relationship between Thor and Natalie Portman better. I kind of didn't notice that, but I will say one thing I might want to add is that I'm not exactly an expert out of it, but I've seen people who had chemotherapy and people with cancer, and they had all these procedures. And, well, they did although the way she looked on someone having cancer, although I don't know if they specify what type of cancer it is, but it does say that it's kind of like stage 4 or something like that. She didn't look exactly much like that because honestly, one of the side effects of chemotherapy is that you lose hair. Because from what I can gather, not an expert on medicine, your skin's pores, they open up so much that that even the place where your hair is, it just opens and it falls. So this is why people with cancer most of the time are bald. They got this half right because the character looks sick, but still has the hair. So honestly, what was his dad? Still, when she turns into Lady Thor, she's pretty good, I'll say. Although they still kind of question that this Mjolnir, it can be lift to whoever Mjolnir seems worthy. So what did she do to become worthy of Mjolnir? Did she? I didn't see her, fighting bad guys or being exactly pure at heart or something like that. So this kind of this are kind of like questions that I do have. Now I talk about Christian Bale. Christian Bale is actually as the villain, Gore, the God Butcher. He is actually one of the better parts of the movie because the villain motivation he has is really great. I really love his motivation that he was the last one from a extinct civilization, and while roaming through the desert, he had faith in the gods. But he loses his daughter, and finding an oasis, he finally finds a god that is mocking him, saying that hey, I just like to see you suffer. You're just a sacrifice and all these things. And the guy is like, but I did everything to you, and you betray me like that. And then he conveniently gets a sword called the Necro Sword, and he kills off that god. And because of that, he swears revenge against the gods. Very Shin Megami Tensei motivation, but still I like that, and that makes him kind of like sympathetic. Even though his design is almost like a cross between Quan Chi and Lord Voldemort. That's the only thing. His delivery and his acting was really, really good. I like that. I like that thing. I like what he did on the. I like what he did on this one. So I was I don't know if it kind of works if a lot of the Marvel Cinematic Universe villains, they're becoming a little bit more sympathetic than hateful, I'll say. I mean, Thanos, Wanda, even though Wanda, I still say that her motivation were pretty petty, considering her annoying brats. This one is kind of like the most sympathetic I have seen. So Marvel's doing a lot of these, and it's been a while since we got one that is actually clearly evil. Man, I don't know exactly much what to say about that. Okay, what else? I think there's also. I will say that there also comes a moment in which they visit, in which Thor visits the kind of this council with God, and he meets Zeus, and Zeus is played by Russell Crowe, and yeah, he kind of plays out this really, really egotistic slob, overweight slob that, well, he just prefers to hide than fighting, the menace, which angers, of course, Thor. Honestly, I can understand that because Thor, I can say Zeus was always an arrogant guy. When you when you look at the how can I say when you look at the Greek mythology, Zeus was always a very arrogant kind of god, and and while they kind of upped the ante on making him a little bit, how can I say, dainty and Slavish, uh, it could have been used, to show that, well, Gore was right. Gore was right. Sometimes we don't need gods. But now they just leave it something, for something like that. And yeah, I'm gonna go spoil a little bit by saying that he just used to, uh, for the post-credits scenes in which it shows a Marvel character. That's the least I will say right now. Oh yeah, another character that I have to say, of course. The goats. That actually was the part that I was mostly worried. I was mostly worried about the goats because the goats is basically a very old meme, the Geico goats that go, "Ah!" The screaming goats, yeah. They used these goats kind of like 8 times, and 3 times would have been enough. But no, they fell in love with those goats that they are used as chariots. And, oh man, talk about beating a dead horse. But in this case, beating a dead goat. Okay, none of us have to talk about, the scenery, because the scenery and the special effects are obviously good. They are obviously good on how the movie looks good. It has a beautiful scenery, especially when they go to the Council of Gods. And there are parts in which the cinematography also gets very ambitious. Probably the best one is when they go to this dark world in order to rescue the children, in which the colors are sucked, and it begins to look like the Sin City movie, with the black and white, and then with stylized colors. Whenever there's kind of like these bright colors, I like that part. This part pretty much becomes the highlight in the special effects part, effect department. And well, now I think it's time for me to talk about a little bit of the scenes, I'll say, in which one of the things that kind of bother me a little bit about this movie is that the movie wanted to center kind of like a theme of love, in which Thor kind of feels like after losing, all his cherished people, like his father Odin and Loki, and a lot of his loved ones, and also he feels the guilt that he was supposed to stop Thanos, but he couldn't. He feels that there's missing something. He is missing something, and it's mostly love, I'll say. And it gave us kind of like this flashback of how his heroic duties technically stray him away from his family life with Jane, which honestly, I kind of felt like this is kind of like the workaholic father syndrome that the 90s had, in which kids saying that my father doesn't love to work better than being with me. This is something that is kind of like a trope that it feels annoying, and in this one it's like, well, your boyfriend is a superhero. What do you expect him to do? Then, then they wanted to make him kind of like a mirror with Gore, saying that Gore was looking for love. But honestly, these things kind of feels it mostly in the third act, and it feels out of place because saying that Gore was also looking for love. But no, he was mostly looking for revenge against God. And again, I am taking the gore side because it kind of proven right that the gods are technically jerks. What else I can say about this one? Also the humor, I'll say. The humor is, it went a little bit too much. A lot of them kind of becomes kind of like cringy and out of place. Some of the running gags that you had, apart from the goat, apparently it kind of turns into this odd love triangle between Thor and his old weapon Mjolnir, and his new weapon Stormbreaker. And apparently when Thor kind of feels kind of like, oh, my old hammer is just going with my old flame, and Stormbreaker, it kind of goes like, yeah. That's what had happened. So it kind of becomes jealous of the old hammer and something like that. And another thing is that sometimes when serious things kind of kick in, it's always Korg that sometimes comes in with a comment. And he's like, oh yeah, here it is. And by the way, a lot of this story has been narrated by him. I forgot to mention that. And it kind of feels like some cockblocker trying to stop that the mood doesn't get too serious. I mean, we're talking about god killings and someone suffering from cancer, and they don't want to say, hey, let's not make it too somber for children. So here's the clown, here's the clown, here's the clown. Oh, jeez. Probably I will say that the cringiest moment that I have with this movie is that in New Asgard, there is kind of like this stage play with some of the lousiest actors doing making this play of Thor's life, and my God, this play was embarrassing. Man, I don't know exactly much what to say about this one. It's just that. I also kind of failed to mention also that the movie also is very reliant on the sound on its soundtrack to make it look like Guardians of the Galaxy just like they did in Thor Ragnarok. But in this case, they kind of use 3 or 4 songs of Guns N' Roses. And I know there's songs, but I'm not exactly a huge fan of Guns N' Roses. That's pretty much I have to say about this. But I also want to say that usually I can see why the Marvel humor is also running out of steam, because they're really, really heavily dependent on awkward dialogues. It's almost like, I did this, or something like that. They kind of like acting like they're pretty much shy. Almost like high schoolers trying to date, but they're kind of failing. So with all this awkward dialogue, that makes the kind of like the experience a little bit more awkward. And I was like feeling like, okay, I don't feel it. And you know what? I don't feel exactly too keen to talk too much about spoilers, I'll say, but in order to end this. But I'll say that the ending was fine. It was fine. It went. Although I wasn't very keen on the resolution of gore, because it felt like it was something that it didn't feel focused on his main goal about wanting to kill gods, and it had to do with some MacGuffin that can grant him wishes. that it come up with a ludicrous moment in which it's about Thor giving power to children. So children, they have, they become kind of like what was the village at the dam with their lightning eyes and even a lightning plushie. It's almost like there's a little girl with lightning plushies and that. Imagine if my Spencer began to shoot laser out of his eyes. that was kind of weird, I'll say. I'm not gonna go into the questions that this scene gives out. And of course, it ends with the post-credit scenes, of course, twice, because this is technically now the norm of every Marvel movie. So now, the big question. Do I recommend Thor, Love and Thunder? Personally, I won't. I don't. I didn't like it much as some people. I heard its mixed reactions. If you're a big fan of Ragnarok, you'll find it fine, but I'll guarantee you that the humor just went a little bit over the top when it didn't need it to be. For a Marvel movie, you can again. Now I'm beginning to feel the fatigue, and I don't know whether to continue with this movie or with this or not, unless there is something kind of like bigger. It gave us something to anticipate with. And like I said before, the biggest anticipation of the three phases is that we were looking for Thanos and the big battle with the Infinity Wars. But in this one, where to go? It doesn't. Where do we go? What are we doing? Man, we're even as lost as Thor himself in this movie. Like I said, there is some love, but there is no thunder.